Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, RFK Refugees Podcast. Ted here, John here talking a DC United, Washington Spirit. Washington Spirit probably mostly on this show.
Almost exclusively.
Almost exclusively on this show. U.S. men's and women's national team. And I forgot, John, we were discussing what we're going to talk about in the pregame. We can also touch a little bit on the U.S. men today, considering they had a 2-0, 2-0 victory over Mexico. I should probably keep a little quiet in the household when talking about that, considering who I married. But John, how you doing, man? How was your weekend?
It was pretty good. I was at a comedy show in Charlottesville last night, so that was
nice.
That was a nice little experience. But how about you? What'd you get into?
I refereed in the morning. Then I on Saturday. Then I think I sat down. There was some World Cup qualifiers. I really hate like international breaks because it's like your whole morning is just like, what do you watch? Like there isn't any like club soccer. Usually all the World Cup qualifiers. Even though this time they had them during the weekend, so I guess there was a little bit to watch. But not a whole lot. I did watch the U.S. Mexico. I caught the second half of that game. Very an impressive win for the U.S. men's national team. So I do want to touch a little bit on that because we all know the fan base out there. Did you watch U.S. Mexico, by the way? I should ask.
Not most of it.
Not most of it.
No.
Well, if you did, I know we on the show we are biased towards our DC United fans. So DC United fans were having a little bit of fun thinking that Paul Arriola would start. Paul Arriola did not make an appearance in this game, but the U.S. looked very good. And I thought this game was a perfect understatement. I think it was a validation that you can disagree with maybe Greg Berhalter and some of the things he does. There are things he's done that I've disagreed with, but he is not a bad coach. He has a clear plan and a clear understanding, and maybe he knows better than you, Mr. USMNT keyboard warrior, about what's best for the team. I have made no qualms about my dislike for U.S. men's national team Twitter, and I thought this game was a perfect understatement of the idea of being patient, of how talented this team is. And I kind of saw a lot of the media talking about like, oh man, this is like the long game. We're playing for 2022. I think it's an even longer game than that. This is a 2026 type of long game that I think the U.S. men's national team is playing. And I think I think it was Felipe Cardenas came out and said, look, I mean, in international like teams, there is not really a national program that is as young as this U.S. men's national team. And, they're going to make mistakes. They're not going to execute in some games, and we've seen that. But when they execute, and they have talent, and this is a really talented young core group of players, they're going to make mistakes. They're going to have games like this. They could very well go down to Jamaica and lose on Tuesday. But I really think this is a young, exciting core of players. And a lot of these guys, like in this World Cup, are going to be in their 20s, like early 20s, maybe some still teenagers, like 19, 18 years old. And then even when they then go to when we have the World Cup here in 2026, they're going to be in their mid-20s. A lot of these players, almost all the players out there, sans maybe like Zach Steffen and maybe Walker Zimmerman. All those players are going to be in their mid-20s. And that is insane to think about, that they went out there, put the type of game they put together against Mexico, beat them the way they beat them. And they're still an incredibly young team. So I think this almost reaffirms, how exciting the U.S. men's national team. So, if the U.S. do drop against Jamaica, let's have everybody just remember this moment and relax a little bit. There we go. That's my 5-minute U.S. men's national team speech.
It's weird. Yedlin's old at 28
he is. Yeah, Yedlin, sorry, I guess was another player I missed. But yeah, but even you're talking Serginho Dest wasn't able to be there. He's sort of maybe sliding into his role.
Yep.
Maybe that's a role Kevin Paredes can take in. He's really impressed. I'll be curious to see maybe how he makes his way into that team, considering I think he has a little bit of a stronger defensive mindset than Serginho Dest. So again, this is like an insanely young team, insanely young program. And I think we all just have to kind of look at this as, let's make the World Cup. Whatever happens in 2022. And then we look forward to what's going to come in 2026. This is a brand new frontier for U.S. soccer. They've had young talent in the past, but I don't think they've ever been like having teenagers as a part of your like lineup.
Yeah.
So this is exciting times, I think, to be a U.S. men's national team fan. But I think some people need to calm down and recognize that maybe Paul Arriola still has a role to play. Walker Zimmerman certainly still has a role to play. There are Sebastian Lletget has a role to play. All these players have roles to play. And just because they play in MLS doesn't mean they're bad.
I think Tim Weah, how well he played, makes Paul maybe not an automatic starter for Greg. I think that's good. We like seeing Paul out there. I also want to see Paul healthy. And I think that maybe him not starting every single game like he was previously for Greg when he was healthy, I think is better for DC United in the long term. But Tim Weah had a fantastic game.
Oh, he was awesome. I think Musa was also really good. Really, really good. And he was another player to get game in. But again, you still had a player like Walker Zimmerman who also had a fantastic game. Zach Steffen, everybody was doubting Zach Steffen. But he was
Which is
really,
wild
really...
to me.
Yeah, it is. I mean, this is a guy, I think he's slowly starting to get more minutes at Man City. I don't know if it'll be this year, but I think in a couple years. And I think also, I still feel like we have a problem with like how we age goalkeepers. Let's be clear, like players like Casey Keller, Brad Friedel, all were playing for the U.S. men's national team in their mid-30s. Gigi Buffon played for the Italian national team for, I'm pretty sure, 15 years. I can feel pretty confident in saying it's somewhere in that range.
And he's still playing at the club level, and he's like 58 or however old he actually is.
However old he is, man. Pat Onstead too. I think they had on the decision day, they had Pat Onstead. I'm like, Pat Onstead still looks like he could be suiting up gloves and going out there and playing. Like he looks exactly the same as when he retired. I think is like one stint for DC.
I was about to say, do you remember for the all the marbles, who was Pat Onstead's last team before he retired? And the answer is DC United.
DC United, yep.
He had the gold, he had like the silver temple, like super white hair on the temples. It was awesome. He was looking like an old backup goalkeeper.
I'm pretty sure he played like 2 games, and then I think he like was hurt, and then I'm pretty sure that was his 2010, and Bill Hamid, went on and played, and Bill Hamid was so good in that first game that basically that was it. And I think Ponce was like, all right, guys, I think you're good with this guy. I'm just gonna go ahead and I'll be your goalkeeper coach.
I'm gonna go be the general manager of the future at Houston Dynamo, predicting my future. Yeah, you're
but
right.
I think he was the goalkeeper coach, I think, for that season at the very least.
For DC United.
But enough men's soccer talk. Let's talk about Washington Spirit and how the Washington Spirit are now they're going to the final. John, how exciting! Give me I'm sure you sat down, you watched that game. You're a little quiet on our show chat, so I was worried a little bit.
Yeah, I was out, so I was out. I had to watch the game after the fact because I was out.
Oh, gotcha.
But yeah, we talked about it last week. This team is I would bet the house on this team beating Chicago next week. I just feel like they are. I feel like they're sort of playing in an unstoppable way. The Reign were not an easy task. They had beaten them twice at their home field this season. But after the second goal was scored, after the ridiculous second goal, which we'll talk about, was scored in the second half, like the Reign they had a number of opportunities, like feet, inches off of goal. Aubrey Bledsoe once again continues, friend of the show now, and 9-fingered goalkeeper. Continues to do the business. Was not as busy as she was in the quarterfinals, but then there were 12 block shots by the Reign in this game, and 23 shots taken. So it was a shooting gallery, but Aubrey only had to make 2 saves that were actually on frame. So just a wild game, and really a gut check test, particularly when they went down in the 3rd minute. That's in a semifinal. It's very hard to not let that get you down, and it did not at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first goal, I was opening, it was like the 2nd minute was like the opening goal, and I will admit I got a little bit like, okay, this might be the magic juice. This might be where the magic juice runs out, because again, we talked about earlier how even though this Spirit team had dominated the Reign in the regular season in Tacoma, We talked about how, the teams tend to step up. And to be fair, the Reign definitely stepped up their game against the Spirit considering the last two appearances, 2 times they played them were not as good. I thought the Spirit, I was very interested. I was kind of like surprised. I think I saw like the expected goals was something like 3 expected goals for
the Reign,
for the Reign, and like 1 expected goal for the Spirit. And I kind of like sat down. I said, well, let me watch the highlights again. Let me see if highlights aren't a great way to analyze a game, but you can see the chances and you can kind of like judge if that felt fair. And I kind of looked at it and said, you know what? Yeah, that's probably pretty fair. There were a couple missed chances. I think one moment, I can't remember who got the ball, who had the shot for the Reign, but I'm pretty sure which Spirit player, but Spirit got caught really bad on one play. And I think it was a wide open opportunity. For the Reign player, and she just like completely took it wide. She had Aubrey Bledsoe beat completely on that shot. But let's get down. First of all, let's talk about the first goal. Beautiful for the Spirit, I should say. We talk a little bit about the Reign, I guess, but I mean, I think Kelly O'Hara had kind of a rough time out there on the right side. She was getting beat, I think, at least a couple times, if I remember correctly, especially on that first goal. She was probably the only performance maybe that, for the start at least, was a little bit weak for me. I didn't really like, she kind of was getting beat a lot, was not able to sort of keep up. Definitely you have your national teammate out there in Megan Rapinoe. She burned her a couple times on that play. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that I think that the Reign, this game did not feel like it was being played on a small pitch. It seemed pretty expansive to me in the midfield. There were chances coming on sort of both sides throughout the whole game. But do we want to talk about Trinity's goal?
Yeah, let's talk about Trinity's goal. Sam Staub, I think people were talking about on the game. I will say this was a game of individual moments from the Spirit. And for the Reign, there was nobody out there who really like took control. You have Rose Lavelle, Jessica Fishlock, Megan Rapinoe. None of those players really seemed to like grab the game the way certain players on the Spirit. And we talk about Sam Staub, just an absolutely unbelievable ball.
Yeah, that's an A+ assist right there.
A+ assist, ball over the top. And then just a calm finish by Trinity Rodman, who does not look 19. It is amazing to me how well composed she is in front of goal. That's like the 3rd or 4th time this season she's gotten a ball over the top, and it's like she's just so composed, knows where she wants to place it, and places it beautifully. It was an incredible goal, and I think it was I almost kind of felt at that moment, I'm like, I feel like we're going to go out and we're going to win this game. I really, when that type of moment happens and you just see this team sort of just continue to rise to the occasion, you get the feeling that this team is playing with a chip on their shoulder, and the magic is not running out. And we'll get to the real magic in the second half.
Right.
But
yeah, Trinity, I think the good thing about that composure is to say that that's something that usually comes later to players. So the fact that she's got it already, I think, it's hard to predict someone's future. Injuries could always derail things or whatever. But she really seems to have such a just limitless future for the club, but also for her national team future. She is a unique player, and we're so lucky to get to watch her this season.
It's incredible to me how fast it is, sort of how fast she's grown, and how well she's sort of adapted. We talk about, and really it's been a lot of players. I think Tara Mikione is another player who was a little rough in the beginning of the year and just really has developed. I think Bailey Feist, we'd have all, unfortunately had her entire season derailed from injury. But I mean, Tara Mikione now is sort of, I don't know if Bailey Feist comes back, I don't know if she takes that spot.
It's certainly depth that was not there before. That was an area where they were having a problem. Yeah, in addition, I think other than the fact that she's depth, Tara Mikione was a player that I know Richie was very excited when she first came here, and I know from just my eye test watching her on the field, she was not ready. Like game speed, she wasn't ready. She wasn't making the right choices with the ball. But then she grew into her confidence over time, and she's first 11 now. I think that if you're wanting to set out with an additional attacking player beyond the front three, someone that's little bit more dangerous and a little bit more offensive oriented, she's a nail on starter. And I think for a team that like Chicago, who's going to set out defensively like they have every single time this year, I would imagine against the Spirit, McKeown probably starts again.
Yeah, I would say so. And you bring up Richie Burke. She got better once. She got much better once he was no longer in the picture. I don't know. Make that of what you will with regards to that. But I mean, again, speaking of
Chris,
go ahead.
Chris Ward also stopped playing her as a number 9.
Yeah, that's also true,
which is also helpful. I think she could probably. She was a 9 in college. Mm-hmm. I just don't think she's better than Hatch in that position. So I think that moving her to more of a flex position between the midfield, sort of a linking player, I think is at this exact moment the best place on the field for her.
Yeah, and she had an opportunity. She had a really nice opportunity. I think she forced a save, kind of cut the ball inside, and had a good opportunity and forced a save out of the Ola Reign goalkeeper. Let's talk about the ridiculousness that was the second goal. Ashley Sanchez is now the Definity just tries things type of player. I don't know if she had that coming in to this, but she certainly is developing it. I will stand and say that she absolutely intended that. Let's talk about the goal. It's a corner kick, comes in, takes a deflection, and she has the audacity to scoop it with the outside of her foot and curl it into the back of the net. Absolutely 100% intentional. I don't think there's any doubt. If she wants to cross that, she's hitting that low and hard and hope. She is not flicking it up to where the keeper can get that. That is 100% an intentional shot. An incredible goal, a cheeky goal, and a goal that really sells, I think, the idea that this team had their talent, the talent out there. Ashley Sanchez, Trinity Rodman, really the brightest young talent stepped up. And they've stepped up this playoffs. I will say probably the one player who maybe hasn't had in this entire run of form that the Spirit have been on, maybe hasn't been the most noticeable or explosive, maybe has been Ashley Sanchez, but she was incredible in this game. She did much more than that goal too. She had a really nice run down the end line as well.
Yeah, you can't say enough about her this season. I think you're right. In the last probably 4 or 5 games, she's not had any of her 90-minute performances where she was completely in control of the game. I think that has a lot to do. It continues to have a lot to do with the opponents. I think she really dominated the weaker opponents like that. Mm-hmm. But when she would play a team that's more better or more cohesively set up defensively, they would probably mark her out of the game a little bit more easy. So sometimes a player has to be taken out of the game for the other players to get their space, and I think Sanchez gets that reputation a little bit. I think I'm very curious to see her in her first call up for the national team. The big thing they said about her was that they noticed that she actually tried on defense, which apparently is something that she never did in college and was the big knock against her. She could always try stuff and pull things off, but it was that she was sort of a one-sided player. So great that's changing for the Spirit for sure. That goal will probably, like I think you said it on Twitter, that's probably the goal of the season or the goal of the playoffs for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
That'll be on the loop. That'll be on the video clip for the year, I would probably imagine.
Yeah, I mean that's the goal of the playoffs. No other nominees needed. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Yep.
Yeah, I think so. Again, so let's. So I guess we talked about the goals. Obviously the rest of the game. I think the Spirit had some opportunities, but like I said, I would be very curious to look at that expected goals trend line, how it was from that second goal, because I bet it was down from what it was the rest of the game. I don't think they gained too much. I think the game was really won at that point for the Washington Spirit, and I think they did a good job seeing out the game. They deflected shots. They blocked so many shots. I think that expected goals, I wish they would take block shots like away from that. I'd be curious to know like how many of those like high expected goals numbers were from like the blocked shots that the Spirit had. But again, and they're moving on to the final. I think at this point, so I mean, I know it's been a tumultuous season. We've talked about everything that's been involved about who's the coach of this team. I think it was kind of assumed that Chris Ward would step in, be sort of the, caretaker while the team went out, maybe found somebody somebody who was not a cis white male. But how do you tell Chris Ward at this point? You took the team to the final. If he goes out and wins it, how do you tell him? How do you tell him at this point? Sorry, we're going to look elsewhere.
You can't. He gets a 2-year deal.
Yeah.
If he wins, I think he gets a 2-year deal right now. Mm-hmm. But it's all depending on what the ownership group does here. But I just think you can't. The players seem to like him. Mm-hmm. I mean, also, though, to be honest with you, I would have said the players like Richie in some ways before too. So the way that the players talk in the media is not the way that they talk, privately, I'm sure. But all that said, it seems like they like him, and he seems like he's a very, very supportive a guy on and off the field for that group. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think that unless ownership could decide that they want to go a completely different way, where whoever actual ownership is at the end of this whole rigmarole. But I think you'd have to keep him, and if he doesn't get a job here, he's got to get a job somewhere else as a head coach.
Yeah,
because this is a serious pull he's done.
There also happen to be a whole bunch of openings in the league right now for coaches. I would say there are probably several NWSL teams right now that are watching very carefully to see what the Spirit do here. And it would not be surprised if he finds a job. I agree with you. One thing I do notice, there are things like Richie Burke would do on the sidelines, like how he would get just so angry at referees. And you see a little of it from Chris Ward, but it's not nearly to the effect that you can hear him on the broadcast.
Right, it's not.
He's a very different style of coach. He's a much more, I'll say, laid back type of coach. And I think that at least leads you to believe that the players do like him. I think if he's the same type of person, I'm not sure the Spirit have this run they're going on right now. But I mean, he has talked about, Kelly O'Hara basically, I think he said in his post game was like, basically after the forfeits, Kelly O'Hara was like, F this, let's go get him. So this team is playing with a proverbial chip on their shoulder right now. And I think that's why that has driven them. I think regardless of who the coach is, I think they still have the success they're having, because that can be a powerful thing for a team when they have that chip on their shoulder. No one believes in us. Everybody's upset with us. Let's go show them what we can do. It can be a powerful thing. But I think certainly Chris Ward deserves a lot of credit for being the coach, for coming into this situation that I'm not sure he envisioned this situation as being his first head coaching gig. And he's done a phenomenal job with the team to steer them, whatever he's doing out there. I think he's, like you said, you talked about some of the tactical changes he's made with Tara McKeown. This team has looked better tactically. I think they've made a little bit more sense tactically. There were some times, I was even looking at some lineups that Richie threw out. I was reviewing some of the Chicago games where they lost badly, and I look at the lineup and I'm like, how do you you've got obviously Yokoyama, who they're good players. They're good. They are a good player. But you've got, Trinity Rodman, Ashley Hatch, sort of as wing players. Then you have Ashley Sanchez playing on the left side. I mean, just lineups that just didn't really. Paige Nielsen playing as a center defense, a center back. This was in their 3-1 loss to the Chicago Red Stars. So just
that one. The Paige was playing center back because of injuries.
That was injuries, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But the up top though, there definitely was a lot more of a rejuggling of players. I think Trinity had back spasms that game. So I would agree. I think Chris Ward, the real difference he has made, and then there's a great article in Black and Red about this that talks about how their defense turned around. Sort of from the Olympics on, they were having a very bad run of form defensively, and what he was able to do is work with these players, get the Olympics players back, but really figure out a way to limit mistakes, stop conceding off of set pieces, which was a big problem for this team for much of the year, off of corners specifically, but not having that compromise your offensive ability. And that's obviously what all teams are really trying to find out, right? Is how do you do both of those things at once without, making one of those elements weak. And in his run, in this team's run, they were able to finally do that. This is a different team, the way they're playing, from the Chicago Red Stars games so far this season. I think both of the Red Stars games were at Segra. I throw those out as weird, right? I think that's hard to really, watch the last couple Spirit games and then think about the way that the Spirit played at Segra, and it's like a body snatcher situation, entirely different players in the same bodies. So I think you just got to throw all that out the window here, and think that it's going to be more like the way the Spirit have played overall versus sort of the historical runs against Chicago. That's our hope, because every one of those games has been ugly, and the neutrals, the NWSL neutrals, will not be excited for if they got similar to what they saw at Segra twice this year.
Yeah, and again, I think again, they haven't played. I think since this run, they have not played the Red Star. I guess the last time they played them was August 1st. So they have not played. The Red Stars have not seen the Spirit team, the way they've been playing, the way they've been, the way they've been playing the game, the way they've been doing. They're a very talented team, and they had a bit of an escape of their own against Portland. Both the top teams in the league. I'm not sure what the league thinks of this. The fact that the Portland Thorns and OL Reign are not playing for the final, considering they were far and away the best teams last year. But
they would not be liking this. I would say that I would say whoever the new commissioner is not rubbing their hands together. I was talking to my friends before this game. I was like, the odds are wacky, but Portland should clean the floor with Chicago. And this is why you don't bet. You don't bet soccer, I guess.
This is why you don't bet NWSL. I did find it kind of funny. There were some people talking about the awfulness that was Spain versus Sweden, which was on ABC. It was on big ABC. This was tucked away on the CBS Sports Network, which you need a special cable package to even get. My hope is that maybe that CBS Sports Network fills the NBC Sports Network void when that channel shuts down. We'll see. I'd be curious to see if that gets promoted up at all on the on cable packages. But that game was apparently terrible from a certain tweet from a certain former DC United player. And this game was, just the quality on the field, the stakes, everything was just kind of coming together. The field was not great. It's not great to watch a game on a converted baseball field. There's a lot of oddities. I think the camera work too. There was the camera work at one point, I think it was raining and it fogged up the camera, and so it was not it looked like you were kind of watching it through your shower door or whatever. It was fogged up, or watching it through a window on a cold rainy day or something like that. So not the most attractive thing, but it was an exciting game overall, and the quality of soccer was really good. The crowd looked pretty big, was really into it. I think I kind of wish on all sides, some of these games, there was more investment in sort of having microphones kind of creating an atmosphere, because you can certainly do that in some of these games. But
wild thing about the Red Stars is it's still unclear whether or not Mallory Pugh will be available for the final, who are both in COVID-19 protocol. Her and Kayla Sharples are both in COVID-19 protocol. I believe, if I remember correctly, that Kayla scored against the Spirit this year. I don't know if that's true.
Well, it is 10 days. I'm sure they will test her. I'm sure they will test her before, I guess, the upcoming. So it would be 8-9 days, maybe. It just depends on what happens as far as I guess those positive tests, whether she can get consecutive negative tests. Apparently that doesn't impact the Spirit's the Red Stars' ability to go out and win a game. Everybody was talking. I thought that was kind of going to be their death knell, was the fact Mallory Pugh wasn't there. But you
and everybody else.
Yeah, but they kind of fought through it. So it's going to be fun. It's again, just like they played Rose Lavelle, they are going to go up against a former player in Mallory Pugh. So we'll see what happens. All right, folks, again, that game will be Saturday, 12 p.m. on CBS, big CBS. I am making sure to set my DVR because I scheduled something without really thinking about it, so I will miss the game. So I'm going to mute my phone, do everything I can, come directly back from my thing, and just sit down and watch the game. So no spoilers. Keep the chat. I apologize, John. I didn't know you were out, so I feel bad if I spoiled the game for you.
No, you didn't. It's fine.
But everybody, if you are available and you can watch it, definitely tune in. It's going to be on big CBS over the air. Should be a fun matchup. I'm very much looking forward to watching it. All right, now let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk some DC United news. First, let's talk about the travesty that was the 2021 MLS Awards. Which just came out, and I think everybody's getting all up in arms about. I think there is a desire to see Hernan Losada get Coach of the Year. I think if he continues down the stretch that he had, I think around the midseason, we were all kind of hyping it up and the work he's done with that team. Not to say I think he isn't deserving of some credit for how we talk about the injuries this team faced, and we'll get to a little bit. He talks about a little bit of that in the interview he just gave with Pablo Maurer. But I think it's interesting that, I think that kind of hurt his chances a little bit. I think it also hurts the chances, and I think it hurt the chances of the other award I think that most fans were excited about the team getting. This team was not on national television. This team had 0 ESPN FS1 games. The only game they had on national TV was on 2DM against Atlanta. I don't know if that changes next season. MLS, I think, is very clearly trying to boost ratings. And DC for right now really isn't a draw. If they go out and sign Cristiano Ronaldo, that certainly changes. But they had a lot of games last season that were on like ESPN and FS1 because they had Wayne Rooney, and that's the nature of how it works. It's not fair. It's certainly not fair. DC played some very exciting soccer. John, it also,
and they had the tied for Golden Boot winner on the team.
That's true. But again, I think it's a nature of what this team is right now. If this team starts going out, signing big players, starts playing well, I think they garner maybe some more attention. I'd be curious if New England fell into that, where they fell into the national TV category. I don't remember seeing them on national TV all that much.
It apparently did not affect them having their players.
Oh yeah,
elected to the short list.
Oh, I mean, you
also because they were amazing and they everything else.
Yeah, I mean, and let's get to this. Let's get to the real, I think, egregious part was that I wouldn't necessarily have been upset if he didn't win the award, but Andy Nahar deserved, I think, a ton of credit. Everybody was also dropping Joseph Martinez as well. I think that's also a good shout considering he came back from injury. I will say, I think
Chicharito just came back from being bad, right?
Yeah,
is that what,
basically. He had some injuries as well. He had kind of an injury-riddled 2020. I think this was an incredibly tough year for the comeback player of the year because
too many comebacks.
Because I think the nature of the season that we had last season and how there were certain players that just didn't show well, including Joseph Martinez, who was injured. I think I even saw I forget, was it Carlos Gil or Gustavo Bo was on the list for the Revolution. I'm like, was he that bad last year? I don't remember talking about him, but I don't think he was terrible last season. I thought he was fairly decent. And I think he is on the
it was Carlos Gil.
Yeah, Carlos Gil. So I don't remember him being terrible. And then Daniel Sololi, I'm I don't honestly remember him being a down player either. So I feel like Andy deserves some due there. Again, I think it has a lot to do with the fact that the team just did not have the national exposure that you get. And so I think a lot of people maybe were keeping up. Maybe they caught a couple games of DC. And again, it's also a nature too of how crowded this league has gotten. There are 30 players. You need to do something really special. I think if the team has a better end of the season, makes the playoffs, I think maybe you're seeing them on a few more of these lists, on these end of year lists.
Ted, I've got a thing that will pivot us to the next point of conversation.
Yeah.
How much do you imagine the Revolution paid to have Carlos Gil transferred to their team?
$2 million.
$1.5 million, $1.6 million.
Okay, pretty good.
So pretty good bit of business from Deportivo La Coruña, and before that from Aston Villa. But now let's talk about a player who was transferred for a little bit more than that.
Yep.
To DC United
for $5 million. And if you haven't read, definitely go check it out. The Athletic article. Pablo Maurer sat down with Hernan Losada, and he had. I don't know if he there wasn't anything groundbreaking in his piece, but there were some interesting thoughts. The most important thing he brought up was, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, I think there are major themes that he would hit on pretty much every post game conference, but he was clear that he wanted to draw out the differences between teams that can spend money and teams that don't, and then on top of that, on teams that don't spend money but do have their big players play a big part. He talked about the good designated players on a lot of the Eastern Conference teams in Nashville, New England, and New York City, Columbus, and that led Pablo into the next question, which was really important about what about Edson Flores. And I'll read this part. I mean, it's not the whole thing, so I'll read this part in quote. He only played 10 games this season, so I don't think we can afford another season where our DPs play so little. For us, our important players need to be playing a lot more minutes than they did this year due to different circumstances. We'll see if those players are who are going to help us next season or not. We'll need to make decisions in order to get better, either with or without them. We need to make sure that our DPs are contributing the same way DPs are contributing on other teams. That is more direct than he ever spoke about Flores throughout the season.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously, I think he did not like talking bad about individual players in press availability, which I get, but he's not talking about Paul Arriola there.
No, he is.
So
I mean, it's more of an impact. I think if Edison Flores, I think the biggest difference is Paul. I'm not sure like how many games. I have to go back and look at how many games Paul Arriola actually played, because I mean I got you. He also was a little bit injured too. But Paul Arriola was extremely impactful in those times when he was out there on the field. And Edison Flores isn't. And that's, I mean, if he played only 10 games this season and he was impactful, number one, I think this team makes the playoffs. Number two, I think you're a little bit more high on him. He's shown like it's just brief flashes of brilliance.
Paul played 20 games
this year. So a lot more. But Hernan's exactly right. You can't miss on designated players. Regardless of how much you pay, you need to hit. The Revolution they're not spending significantly more. They just have a really good organization, a really good structure, and also a really good coach. And I think DC is developing that. I think they're still in the early stages of getting that together. I'll be excited to see a couple of things. I'll be excited to see. It seems to me also, I think in the interview, he also hits on kind of the importance of off-season training. And I think he is really eyeing this off-season to really make sure his guys are in shape so they don't have to start so behind in his mind to sort of play his system. I think he was impressed with, the way the team came together. They bought into his system really quickly. He was not really expecting that. And I think that has given this team, like we talked about, a really good base to build off of.
And he also said that, he said that the season began with 7 players unavailable due to them being out of shape, which to him I think is a cardinal sin that will not be tolerated at the beginning of next year. Mm-hmm. I think if you hear about any players like that, next year they will be gone. They will be gone before the season starts.
Yeah,
I think that, or he will make it known that those players are not in his plans, because now there's no excuse, because now Hernan has been the coach as they go into the offseason. Like, here's my expectations. You know what it's going to be. And then I think the last thing of note that was interesting was sort of Loudon. The question about Loudon. Pablo's like, they suck. They've sucked for a couple years. They don't win very many games. What do you think? And it was in the context of the other answers that he gave. Basically, was like, I know that we could improve every single aspect of this club, make it more professional. It will take money. It will take time. Of those things, the most important is it's going to take time. There's no way that we can get to where we want to be next year. It's going to take money, and it's going to take time and patience. So even though Hernan, I think we talked about this earlier, like what is Hernan's long-term goal and what he wants as a manager here and elsewhere, he was definitely saying that this is not going to be an immediate fix for this club. Like, all the things that he knows that we need to do is going to take some time. So I guess that's also telling for patience, I think, in the fans who maybe want an owner to wave a magic wand and have this team sort of become a different club and be an echelon above where they're actually located. But he's I think he's a reasonable guy. Mm-hmm. I think he has a lot of ideas about what he wants, and he certainly made them clear. I think that's good. Like, right? Like, I think there's a difference between being a coach that is impossible to work with, like an Jose Mourinho, who both will tell you what he wants and then make your life miserable when you don't give it to him. But it sounds like at the end, he was saying basically, at the end of the day, my job is to play with the players they give me. And I have now done a lot more explaining on who I want. And I can tell now, looking at the players who did play and how they were square pegs in round holes, that what we know what we need now. But once the season starts, that's who I've got. So that's who I'll coach. So I thought that was a good quote too.
Yeah, and another thing, what I think has made Hernan Losada so impressive for me is his first year in the league. he very clearly, I mean, this guy, I mean, probably this guy didn't have much else to do. He's new to a city. So what did he do? I think he turned.
He met a girlfriend.
He has a girlfriend. I think if the girlfriend is he has a girlfriend now. Maybe those things will change. But he very clearly watched this league. I mean, we saw in his Instagram feed he was watching the CONCACAF Champions League games. He said
he watched every Loud United game live.
Yeah, he watched it,
which I can't even say that I did.
I mean, yeah, it's a very different when you have to watch it. But the way this man, I think, an underrated talent. It's not just his vision, his ability to motivate. This dude prepares, and what was so amazing to me, and maybe this shouldn't be that impressive, is the play. Like, he was asked about some of the big players in this league. He like literally lists off, Carlos Gil, Gustavo Bo, Mukhtar. He starts listing off. He goes, Zella Rayon. This guy clearly like knows the league. Do you think like do you think if you asked Frank DeBoer like who his like favorite MLS players, he might name like one or two other than the players who play for his own team? I don't think he would have had that like type of foresight or that type of knowledge, but it's very clear to me that this. And he also talked a lot about how different everybody is in this league. Like it's not like he says in Belgium, you're very like teams pretty much play the same way. You pretty much, you play against one team, you pretty much know how to set up against the other team. There may be some slight differences, but in the tools they're given, but they basically all play the same way. But in MLS, and this is very true, it's all very different. Some teams play possession. Some teams like DC and New York are going to press. Some teams like Nashville are going to kind of sit back and kind of like build through the back. You have varying play styles that you're going to see in this league, and very different types of players. And I think that's what makes this league so much fun to watch, is you're not seeing the same thing over and over again. You're seeing, depending on what team you're watching, you almost have a different style. And I think it's a representative of kind of how this country is. And I think DC now has an actual style. And it's going to be fun to see what happens, I think, in this offseason, who they sign, how the team looks. One last thing about, I feel like at the Edison Flores quote was like 75%. He's gone 25%, but we're going to leave the door open. I think they are going to, and they may have already done this, sit down and say, look, okay, this hasn't been what you wanted. If you stick by me, we're going to do a strict training regimen. We're going to get you in shape. We're going to get you in the best shape of your life come January.
Like they did for Andy.
What's that? Like they did for Andy. We're going to get you in the best shape you've ever been in your life. If by January things aren't working out, we're going to find somewhere else to move you. But right now, like that, this is it. And I think I would not be surprised if that's the mode he's going to take, is like, let's see what he's like. If he comes back in sort of the same shape that he was in January, then I think we need to find somebody else. So I think he certainly knows that Edison Flores is a talent. I'm sure he sees something in him. But I think it's a question of he needs to be out there. If he's not out there, then he's dead weight on this roster. So we'll see. I think this is, again, it's going to be interesting to see whether Flores is back. And I think also if the team finds somebody else in their scouting that they think can be better, you best believe that maybe he's gone before then. So.
Yeah, and what kind of value can they get for the player at all? That will all dictate it. But either way, this is, I think it's more context than we normally would get. Yeah. We didn't get this with Ben at the end of seasons, really.
Nope.
So I think this is a good overall for fans as we get excited about the future. This is good stuff.
Yeah, it is.
We like this.
It is good stuff, and it's going to come fast. I mean, the playoffs, we got a little bit of break with the international break, but the playoffs are going to come fast, and then it's going to be expansion draft. I don't know if DC is going to have any players maybe of threat of them losing. I know their homegrowns will get some protection. Obviously, they'll protect probably a top 11. And then you've got a lot of dead weight. Maybe they expose an Edison Flores. I don't know.
Charlotte, Edison Flores is great. I don't know what the Peruvian community is like in Charlotte, but he would be great there.
I'll be curious. Well, they do have to keep track, I think, of a couple internationals, so we'll see what happens. All right, folks, I think this is going to do it for the show. Definitely, please go check out the Washington Spirit on Saturday in Louisville. I know some people are going to make the trip down to Louisville. I don't know if John's going to be.
Me, unfortunately.
John's going to miss the boat. I'm going to miss the boat too on that one. We'll plan better when they make their run to their second straight title. Trust me. Maybe it'll be actually at like someplace close by that we can actually drive to. Again, thank you all so much for watching us. You guys are awesome. Twitch.tv/RFK Refugees. Donate your Prime sub. Again, sorry for no live show. Producer Brian had some family business he needed to attend to, so could not do the show, and I just didn't feel comfortable producing a subpar live show.
So you guys like the old days.
It's like the old days. Exactly. Guys, we will probably be back on Monday live to wrap up. Hopefully it will be a championship for the Washington Spirit, and we'll continue to talk soccer with you guys. You guys have been awesome. It's been a long season. We've all enjoyed the time though, and we'll get you guys next Monday. Vamos.